training, I want to tap into that, Joel. Now you have your ebook collection, right? That you put out. Is
Yeah.
that typically what you essentially follow for yourself? Is that typically your routine, if you will?
Yeah. The idea behind like making those was because when I did start to get some following, like I was getting a lot of questions, mostly about training. People tend to ask more questions about training than they do diet, I've noticed. It's kind of changed over time, but I thought, well, I'm just going to write all these ebooks up, and this is the way I train. And if you want to know how I train and you want to replicate that for whatever reason, like then you can just get a very affordable ebook. That was my, idea behind that. But yeah, that is pretty much the way I train. Like most body parts, I'll do sort of like between 16 to 20 sets per body part per session, and that might be like twice per week. So it's pretty
Right.
high volume. At the moment, the volume is probably not that high, maybe like a maximum of sort of like 16 per body part. Like back will be 20 plus sets just because and legs as well, because they're larger muscle groups. Yeah, I think it's a pretty simplistic way of training. I'm not overcomplicating it.
Is that per week or was that per workout? And you hit everything twice a week?
Yeah, per workout, and I
Per
hit everything
workout.
twice a week. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty high, right? For the average listener who's probably not doing that, right? So
Yeah,
that's,
and
but
there's gonna be
that's
some that say, "Oh, that's overtraining. You shouldn't." Like, I appreciate all the concern that everyone's given me over the years, but I'm doing just fine. I think
right.
if you're eating the way I eat, and I do also get a lot of rest. My partner's quite supportive, but I just try and get as many hours of sleep a night as possible. My daughter is actually pretty good as well. She'll sleep for like some nights she has like between 8 and 10 hours of sleep. So if I can just get myself to bed at the same time as at the same time she does, then I too am going to get 8 to 10 hours sleep.
It aligns with what you're doing. She's got to be pretty young, I think, from the photo you put up recently, right? That's your daughter?
Yeah, she's
Yeah, yeah.
4. Yeah,
4 years old. Okay, so yeah,
yeah.
she's exiting the stage of keeping you up at night.
Yes, yes. She
Good.
hasn't in a long time. Like she doesn't wake up in the middle of the night anymore. So
Perfect.
she still might come into my bed, but it's fine. I think sleep is probably the most important part of like that recovery process. There's only so much you can do with nutrition, like especially post workout. But I think people don't place enough importance on sleep. And I think there's also like this, like it's a bit of like a lot of guys tend to compete with their friends and coworkers, not whatnot, with how little they can sleep, and the fact that they got up at 3 a.m. and I got up at 3 a.m. already done one session, blah blah, and that's great. But surely, I think your training performance is not going to be maximized with such little sleep.
Right. How much sleep do you get? Nine hours, would you say?
Yeah, I feel like I need at least like 9 to 10. I would love
Yeah.
to get like 10 consistently. That's pretty hard, but that's what I feel like I need. And I think that's to support the amount of not the amount of training. Like the sessions aren't that long. I keep the rest periods pretty short, but for that type of volume and to do that twice a week, every week is definitely taxing on most people.
Are you still crushing the 2 days?
2 sessions a day.
Yes.
No, I haven't been doing many.
Okay.
So yeah, that's another thing. Like that's kind of like one of those cards I mentioned earlier that I will play when I'm, trying to lose body fat. And that's one way to
Right.
increase intensity. So as the volume increases, so if I was to do, say shoulders and arms and calves in the one session, I kind of like to do calves on their own. I don't like to do it with the rest of the leg session. If I did all that together, that'll just be such an arduous session just because of the time it would take me to do all that. If I was doing, 16 plus sets for biceps, 16 plus sets for triceps, and then the same for shoulders, and then maybe like I do 10 or something sets for calves, like I'll be in there for hours. So once the volume increases, then that's when I'll start to separate sessions. I'll
Okay.
do like legs in the morning and chest. At the moment, like I could do chest and back together, and I'm not in there for too long just because I'm reducing the quantity of sets.
Okay. And that's because you're not necessarily prepping for a contest. So when you're prepping for a contest, your volume needs, or for you, what you do is your volume goes up. So you'll add more sets as you're prepping for a show.
Yeah. So when I'm
Okay.
prepping for a show, one of the first things I'll do is increase the volume a little bit of the training and increase training intensity by incorporating things like drop sets and stuff. So that's the first thing I'll do is like basically increase training intensity. in various ways. And then later I'll add, cardio. And then later I'll manipulate the diet a little bit. But yeah, I try not to just do everything at once, because that's sort of a surefire way to hit a plateau and have your body start to fight against you.
So when you're trying to put on muscle, your volume is actually less, specifically because you feel that is actually better for growth, like to do less total sets. Is there a compensation there? Like, for example, maybe higher intensities of effort, or what's your thought process there?
Yeah, well, that's not always been the case, but
Okay.
I'm just doing this at the moment. I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I'm actually focusing, I've never focused on sort of the weight I've lifted. I am still a big believer in like getting the most out of the least amount of weight. So that could mean, improving the range of motion, focusing more on the, peak contraction and stretch, that kind of stuff, like slowing down the tempo, shortening the rest periods to increase intensity, that kind of thing. But lately, I have been wanting to, improve my strength a little bit and see if that does contribute to muscle growth. So that's the only reason lately that I've reduced the volume a little bit. I am increasing the weight lifted. So the intensity is still there. And the rest periods still aren't very long. So the intensity is definitely there. It's like, in many ways, it's just as intense. It's just a slightly different style of intensity, different style of training.
I understand. So basically, as you're approaching the contest, maybe next time around, the load might drop a bit, but the volume might go up. Is that kind of the idea there potentially? Because you're essentially doing heavier loads now, which is why you might not be doing as many sets, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
It may go that way. It may also be like last time when I competed, like some of my best lifts, like the heaviest lifts, happened in that comp prep period. And I think just because I was hyper focused, and I don't like the idea that you have to or you should be lessening the weight because like energy will go down. But I believe in trying to maximize training performance in other ways. Like again, like what I mentioned, like we'll just get more sleep. Do what you need to do to maximize training performance every single session, so that leading into a competition, you're not jeopardizing the training performance, thus jeopardizing the muscle that you got from that style of training. Like if you start doing different, like if it's too drastic, like I know a lot of guys from, that have competed in the past from gyms that I worked at that almost entirely like altered their training style and performance because they got it in their head that, oh, because I'm having less calories, I can't lift as much and I can't train for as long. And so, that you just sort of saw over time this sort of linear process of their training performance just dipping and dipping. And I also saw their muscle mass just sort of like their muscles just wilting away. And that's when you start to look like just a little bit sickly, like you've just lost everything you've gained. And then, their rebound is just gaining that back. And so every time they compete, they make no progress just because it's this peaks and troughs thing. They're not sort of making progress over time. It's just, oh, I'm losing strength and therefore I'm going to like lose the muscle that I gained while I was in my sort of like bulking phase or whatever. And they're just sort of getting skinny and then they gain it back. Like it's just a vicious cycle. So I try and avoid that. I try and avoid that mentality.
Okay. So typically you're trying to keep your strength level the same, if not maybe increase that while you're cutting.
Yeah, I definitely did increase it. Like I definitely, and it's not to say like I couldn't have done, lifted the same weight before the cut, but I think it was again just because I was so hyper focused on like creating the best possible physique that I've ever created for myself. So that's why a lot of the lifts improved during that period of time.
Right. You like combining the opposing, we'll call it quote unquote opposing muscle groups? Okay.
Sometimes, yeah. So again, if I'm short on time or I'm trying to increase training intensity for that session, then yeah, I'll superset chest and back. I'll do something like that, or I'll superset biceps and triceps. But more often than not, I do like sort of honing in on just one muscle group and giving that one muscle group my sort of undivided attention. That's why I do my split is, say if I started the split on Monday, it'd be like legs in the morning and chest at night. And then the next day would be like maybe just back by itself, or I would do back in the morning and shoulders at night. And the next day would just be like arms and I'll do, calves and abs in the evening, something like that. So I am trying to sort of separate them as much as possible. I'm someone that just can't dedicate too much time and attention to like well, it's more so like my attention under a particular amount of time. Like I don't want to spend hours in the gym, but I don't mind coming back later for a second session, because I sort of treat it like another day. Like your ability to sort of provide that workout the same level of attention as sort of come back by the evening. In the one session, for me at least, it's a little bit too taxing to go like, oh, I've still got this much to do, you know. So if I separate it, I'll sort of have recovered by then, by the evening, and then I'm sort of ready to go and give that next muscle group the same level of intensity and energy and focus.
Right. Well, that's typically what a lot of the professional bodybuilders did back in the 70s, right? And maybe even a bit earlier. Well, obviously there was a period, I think, where it shifted from like marathon workouts. I think it was like 3-hour workouts, full body, like Steve Reeves era, right? And maybe even some of the off-season approaches that some of the golden era bodybuilders took, like the 4-day splits where they were combining, like it was like a double split routine. I think it was like half the body one day, the other half the next day, and they would train like 4, maybe 5 days a week or something. But the workouts were really long from what I read. Like I wasn't there obviously, but these just what I'm reading. But from what you're saying now, it's obviously you're going to be able to provide way more focus and energy just to that body part if you come back later. Obviously not everybody can do that. Scheduling, dedication, grit, a certain amount of grit that you need to be able to withstand 12 sessions a week, because I'm assuming you're training 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Some
weeks every day.
Some weeks every day. So there's a bit of a psychology, well, not a bit, a lot. There's a big psychology component there, because people can mentally get burnt out with that approach, right? So, but for you,
the ones that don't genuinely enjoy it will definitely get burnt out. But the reason why I have no issue with it and that I'll always find time for is because I genuinely love training. So I want to go back. Like when I train legs in the morning, I'm like, I've got a training partner at the moment, and he's very similar to me in that, like, he's really caught the bug. He's a young guy, and he can't wait to go back. So for the people like that, you know, where you say, like, you've just done this grueling leg session in the morning, you go, man, I can't wait to come back and do chest. Those people won't get burnt out. You know, it doesn't matter what you sort of throw at them in regard to like training and nutrition. Like they love it. And that's me. And then there's a lot of people that I feel like they're really trying to be someone that they're just not, you know, and they're like, no, I'm going to compete this year. And like, dude, you've not got a single month taking it that seriously, but they just like the idea of like getting in this incredible shape and stepping on stage and all the rest of it without actually doing what's required of them. You know, it is definitely, a lot of people have this mentality of just trying to like get the reward without having to do the same amount of work. And so those are also the same people that will say like, Joel, you know, couldn't have got this naturally because I tried it. I didn't look like that. You know, it's well,
it's bogus. So do you typically like to consume higher fats or higher carbs, relatively speaking, of course? Like, are your fats a bit higher than your carbs, or is it vice versa? I know some people from a preference standpoint, how they look too. Like, for example, if my fats are higher than my carbs, even if the calories are somewhat around the same.